planning and mapping and creating this episode, and it's gonna be amazing. Because of everything that I've done this for episode, like, this is probably going to be the best episode I have ever done. Now, this episode, I'll be talking about My Hero Academia, and for short, it's MHA. MHA. So yes, My Hero Academia is anime. You might not be into anime, and that's cool. At first, I wasn't either, but just hear me out on this one, and you might just pique your interest. And I'm going to go into depth about MHA, and it's all about how quirks work, how their superpowers work, some of my favorite characters, about the school, about the villains, all of it. And you know how I like to do things. There is no spoilers because I really want to encourage you to watch the show. So let's get it going. I am Chanel. This is the Nerd in Texas podcast, the Rebel podcast without a real intro. I talk about movies, books, TV shows, and the occasional video game. I also give you fun facts and information about your favorite actors, actresses, and fandoms. If you're a returning listener, thank you so much. I appreciate every single one of you. If you are a new listener, have a seat, and I hope you enjoy my episode and learn something new about your fandoms that you love, or find something you might want to watch. This episode and my last few episodes have been chosen and scheduled by From Under the Apron, a fellow podcaster. I did a poll on Twitter and he said, do all three. And he put them in order in which way I should do it. And I said, challenge accepted. I'll be leaving a link to his Linktree in my podcast description so you can go check out Under the Apron podcast. The schedule was as follows. It was Glass Onion, I already did that one. She-Hulk, I did that one. And now My Hero Academia, that I am obsessed with. Now for my fellow podcasters and for my listeners, if you would like to choose my podcast episode, I'll give you a shout out just like I did with Under the Apron. Shoot me a message, pick my episode. If I don't know what it is, I'll watch it, I'll read it, I'll play it, and then I'll make my episode. But now let's get started about My Hero Academia. IMDb gives it 8.3 out of 10 stars, and Rotten Tomato gave it 100% tomato meter and 88% audience score, and that's huge. My Hero Academia also has movies, and they all scored about 80 and above for the tomato meter. Now, I haven't seen any of the movies yet. This is everything based on the TV show. Both IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes describes it as, in a world populated with superhumans, the superhero-loving Izuku Midoriya is without power. However, after the quirkless dreamer, Izuku inherits the powers of the world's best superhero, All Might. His hopes of becoming the top hero are now possible. Once enrolled in the High School of Heroes, UA, Izuku soon discovers being a hero is much more complicated than it appears. Normally, this is the part where I go into the cast and who plays who voices who, but for one, I can't pronounce their names and I don't want to butcher any of the names and mess all that up. But what I can say is the voice of All Might is Christopher Sabat in the English version. He has been the voice of many characters in the world of anime, including Piccolo and Vegeta from Dragon Ball Super. Also, Justin Cook, who voices one of my favorite MHA heroes, is Kirishima. He is from Lubbock, Texas, and that's not far from me, but I'm not going to stalk him. Don't worry. I will wait to see if he's at a con or something close to me or something like that. There is like an anime con that kind of happens around me sometimes, and I haven't been able to go to it, but this year I really want to go to it. So hopefully there will be some MHA characters at this anime con. He's also been some major characters in Dragon Ball Z, as well as been a producer for a lot of shows. Now, this episode is going to be a lot, and it might be longer than what my normal podcasts are, because I try to keep them short, but there's so so much information with My Hero Academia that it was kind of really hard to keep it short. I mean, it's kind of like trying to do a podcast and summarizing X-Men. And there's so many X-Men, so many mutants, so many superheroes, so many bad guys. Just there's like so many characters involved that I tried sticking to the important ones and getting the information and the facts and about the important ones, and the ones that are kind of important but not important, I give you the basic information for them. So now I'm going to get into the terminology, and some of the words that I probably just threw at you, you're probably like, what? In the MHA, My Hero Academia universe, it's kind of like the reverse X-Men. When you have humans and a select few who have the X gene and are given powers, in My Hero Academia, you have the majority of the people with quirks, superpowers, and less people are basic humans with no powers. So quirks are what they call someone with, like, if you have a quirk, you have a superpower. And so basically there are more people with quirks and superpowers than there are people who are basic humans in My Hero Academia. So how do you get a quirk? Quirks are genetic. They develop at a young age, usually around kindergarten age, and they go on through adult life. So in My Hero Academia, children get their powers from their parents. Sometimes the same parents, and if both parents have powers, you can sometimes have the same powers of the same powers that your parents have, or some kind of mutation of those powers. So what is the history of quirks in My Hero Academia? It is said that the first child to have a quirk was a baby born in China, and that its body would glow. Then, one by one, more people started getting quirks around the earth. The way they can identify if someone will have a quirk was by checking their pinky toes. It's not true anime if there isn't something weird about it, right? If someone had an extra joint in their pinky toe, they would be quirkless. If they had one joint in their pinky toe, they would develop a quirk. The negative side of quirks is you develop them at a young age. You either did stupid stuff with them or you couldn't control them. And some of them turned into criminals or villains and would use their quirks against the quirkless. Sorry, that was kind of hard to say. Society decided to counter the problem by creating the system of superheroes. And there are 3 types of quirks: emitter, mutant, and transformation. The emitter type of quirks have been known to be the most common quirk type. It's also an activation type quirk that doesn't change the user's appearance, but rather the property of things around them. There's also the mutant type of quirk. This quirk causes permanent abnormalities to the users, which is most of the time directly related to their abilities and power. Their quirk type allows them to execute their quirks more quickly and effectively without repercussions of overuse due to their form. Most of the time, the mutant quirks have been passed down through generations. And so what really all that means is the mutant quirk is someone who has the mutant quirk, they are like that 24/7. They are what their quirk is every moment of their life. So it's very easy for them to use their ability, use their quirk, as opposed to someone who kind of has to tap into it all the time, or tap into it to use it. Now for transformation type quirk, this quirk allows the user to temporarily transform and alter their body in different ways. The transformation can enhance existing features or add features to the user's body. Now some quirks have a catch. For instance, a superhero named Real Steel explains that his ability is to turn his skin into steel, but there's a catch to his quirk. His skin softens if he is unable to consume iron and can quickly become tired if he maintains his steel form for too long. Some are a little more complicated than that, and it causes them to have a hard time living their lives with their quirks. I mean, because if you can imagine something like that happening to you in your kindergarten age, one, you don't know what iron is. You don't know what an iron deficiency is. And so you can imagine how kind of hard that might be, especially if it was someone who has a quirk where the catch is more complicated. So those are the ones that become the villains. Now, let's talk about the superhero system in My Hero Academia. Now, they draft superheroes like the NFL draft, and those with a quirk who want to be a superhero, their dream is to be the number one superhero. You have high schools and their teachers who also have quirks, but are also superheroes who are teaching high school age kids to be superheroes in hopes to one day be teaching the future number one hero. The high school it shows the most is UA. UA is the inverted kanji for superhero. Their motto is plus ultra and is Latin for further beyond, and that is actually the motto of Spain, but in the show you will hear them shout, "Go beyond plus ultra," and it really means to go beyond your limits, because if you watch the show, the high school age kids really do get pushed past their limits by their teachers and by the tests that they have to do in order to master their quirk. In one season, they go through almost like a superhero Olympic trials called the UA Sports Festival. The UA Sports Festival is televised. All of them in the school go head-to-head against their classmates, and the last person standing is considered the ultimate future hero. Depending on their ranking in that they got in the UA Sports Festival, kind of dictates their internships that they get later on in their high school career. So it's like, if you are the last one standing and you are the number one person at the UA Sports Festival, all the internships, all the people who they're all going to go for that person. And they're going to be like, "Oh, we want the number one," right? But there's also a bad side to this UA Sports Festival. In order to be a superhero, you have to pass your provisional licensing exam. It is organized by the Hero Public Safety Commission. It is a committee of non-heroes who manage heroes and society as a whole. You have certain rules you have to abide by. If you don't have your provisional license, you can't save people. In order to pass the exam, you have to make it to the last phase. There are phases to this exam because thousands of high school kids with quirks show up. The first phase is that they have 3 sensors placed anywhere on their body that access targets or weak points. A student is given 6 orange balls. They have to use these balls to hit other students' targets or weak points. Once all 3 targets have been hit by an orange ball, they are eliminated. But the person who hit the last target or the third target is the one who gets the credit for the elimination. You have to eliminate 2 students to move on. Only the first 100 students who complete this phase move on. The rest failed. Phase 2 is a fake disaster. They have actors acting as people who were attacked by villains. The students have to rescue them. All the students are given 100 points. They are judged for their mistakes, and then they get points deducted. For example, there's a student at the UA who is known for not handling situations very well. he shows up to a hurt man and is like, oh, this is terrible. This is bad. And he immediately got points taken away for not calming the situation. Now, after a few minutes of this, a fake villain who is actually a professor at the school, his name is Gang Orca. Gang Orca is half man, half killer whale. He's what you call a mutant type quirk that affects his physical appearance. He also can't shut it off. So his quirk gives him the power, as you guessed it, of a killer whale in and out of the water. So, you know that part in Moana where he's trying to get his hook to work and he can't, and he turns into like half man, half shark? It's kind of like that. Like, he's got the legs of a man, but then he's got like the top part of an orca whale. He's actually one of my favorite characters, but he's not in it a whole lot. He has super strength and speed. He also can give off hypersonic waves to destroy things and even paralyze his victims before he attacks. His weakness is he can't stand high temperatures due to him being part whale. So it doesn't work when he's fighting someone with a fire quirk. But back to the exam. The students have to control the situation, help rescue the civilians until authorities or a higher ranking superhero shows up. Now, what does this have to do with the bad part in the UA Sports Festival? So, it's not just the UA students who are trying to get the licensing exam. It's students from other superhero high schools that show up as well. And so the licensing exam also has a nickname of Crushing UA because the sports festival is televised. Students from other schools get to know their quirks and their fighting styles when the students from UA go in blind, not knowing the other students' quirks. Therefore, a lot of UA students don't pass. But this year, this UA had one important student. And so we're going to dive into the students and the superheroes of My Hero Academia and UA. When you watch the show, there isn't a narrator. But when a new character is on the show, there's almost like a game announcer, and he tells you what their stats are. He kind of announces them like a playing card. He tells them their name, their quirk, and their superhero stat. Or they're like, they'll tell them their real name, and then what their superhero name is, and what their quirk is. So here's an example.
Her quirk, zero gravity. She can nullify the gravitational pull of anything she touches. But if she uses her power too much, she totally hurls.
So that's also another example of what I meant by someone having a quirk or a superhero and having a catch. So let's get more into the fun stuff. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the UA staff. There is Nezu, a pro hero and principal of the UA, in the rare case that an animal develops a quirk. So he's actually an animal. He's multiple animals. He's a dog, a mouse, and a bear. And he has enhanced senses and is highly intelligent. We have Recovery Girl, who's a pro hero, and who isn't a girl, but she's a cute little old lady, and she's a nurse at UA. Her quirk amplifies the healing process by kissing the injured person. She can heal injuries in a matter of seconds. The kiss takes a large amount of life energy that comes from the injured person and could potentially drain enough energy to kill the recipient. She controls how much a person heals. She's also a medical professional who can perform surgeries and such. So someone could be completely, really badly hurt, and she won't fully heal them, because if you're hurt to the point where you're almost dead, it takes your life energy and amplifies it to heal you. So if you're already on the brink of death and she tries to do that, it's going to take all of your life energy. And so you'll see some cases where she heals someone very slowly as opposed to healing them right away. You have Lunch Rush, who is a pro hero and chef at the cafeteria of UA. He doesn't talk and you don't really see him. So you guess what his quirk is? It's cooking. So how does that make him a hero? Well, every little thing counts in My Hero Academia world. And very little things can make someone a superhero. So he can cook a huge amount of food in a short period of time. He cooked for thousands of victims of a typhoon on his own. So you can see how helpful that would be if there was an earthquake, a volcano, a tornado that destroyed a town or something like that. He could be there to cook food for the refugees. 13, and one of my favorites, is a pro hero and is a rescue training specialist. She specializes in search and rescue. She has the quirk of a black hole and can replicate a black hole suction from her hands. The suction is very powerful and not even light can escape. Anything sucked into her hands disintegrates into dust. And she has a suit that's like an astronaut suit, and her fingertips open up and she's able to use her, to have it sucked through her fingertips. Hound Dog is a pro hero and the lifestyle guidance counselor at UA. He gives the attributes and abilities of a dog, such as heightened sense of smell. He's half man, half dog. He just looks like a giant dog. And he's always angry. So when he talks like a man, but then when he gets angry, his words are jumbled and turned into growls. So that's it for the UA staff. So I'm now going to start talking about UA high school teachers who are also pro heroes. And we're going to get started with our number one superhero, All Might. There is a lot to All Might. All Might is the superhero that every superhero wants to be. And in some ways, it's a good thing. And then at other times, it's not a good thing. It's a lot of the creations of villains. His quirk is called One for All. It allows him to stockpile an enormous amount of raw power, allowing him to significantly enhance all of his physical abilities to a superhuman level. So who is All Might and what makes him so special? And like I've said 5 times now, he's the number one pro hero, and he was given the title the world's symbol of peace. And after being forced to retire, he becomes the heroics teacher. He is the 8th holder of the One for All quirk. And we're going to get more into that later with a different character. All Might used all of the embers of One for All to defeat a villain called All for One. All for One is the world's most powerful villain, and All Might defeated him twice. But the second time was fatal to him and his quirk. He is the most powerful and is called All for One because he wants everyone's quirks for himself. So all the quirks for one person. All Might was hurt so badly defeating All for One that there is no recovery for it. And it has caused him to retire as the world's greatest hero. The injuries All Might received from battling All for One forced him to be in his true form. So think about Captain America. Before he turned into Captain, he was, Steve Rogers, skinny little Steve Rogers. So imagine Captain America being injured so bad that it turns him back into Steve Rogers. And he has to use a lot of his energy to turn back into Captain America. And speaking of Captain America, also, All Might is known as the symbol of peace. His catchphrase is, "I am here." I totally did not say that right. We're not as good as he. He has like this deep, like Santa style, like voice. I can't do it. I actually have him saying "I am here" in Japanese as my text tone. So when someone texts me, I don't know. I think it's awesome. He is obsessed with America, and his personality is like a cheesy, generic comic book superhero. He always smiles when saving people. He always interacts with his fans. He's obsessed with America due to receiving his training in America. And he names his superpower moves after a state. For example, he will yell, "Detroit Smash!" or "California Smash!" Dude, that sounds so terrible, and I'm so sorry. But All Might's injuries have given him a short amount of time to live. When in his true form, his health is declining, and it reduces him to be a very skinny man with long limbs. He looks like he hasn't eaten in a week. He looks homeless. He has a large scar that takes up his left side, and he'll just like randomly spit up blood, like when he gets excited or anything like that. He'll just like random, like in the movies when someone's dying, they like spit up blood. Yeah, you get it. When in this form, he stays away from people because he's ashamed and doesn't want people to know that he can't stay All Might for more than 4 hours. And he's completely embarrassed of his true form. And people, if they were to see him in public, will not recognize him anyways. Recovery Girl can't heal him because it takes the person's energy to heal themselves, and he doesn't have any left. So her healing could kill him. And she also lets him know that if he stays All Might for too long, it gets even more injuries, and he's going to die. And if he gets any more injuries, like any more fatal injuries, he's going to die. There is so much to go on about All Might. I can keep going, but there are so many other things that I need to get to, that I need to explain, and you'll hear a lot of it when I talk about another character. Now, for my personal favorite, like he is my favorite, is Shota Azawa. Pro hero name is Eraserhead. He is class 1A's classroom, like homeroom teacher. So the main characters in this show, they are in class 1A of UA. And he is their teacher. He's the homeroom teacher. He's a pro hero. His quirk is that he can temporarily take away another person's quirk by looking at that person. So Shota, or Eraserhead, has one of those quirks that has a catch. He can take a person's quirk by looking at them, and the effects of his quirk can still last even if they're not in his line of vision. But it goes away when Shota blinks. He wears a utility belt and his signature wrap scarf that is a binding cloth that he uses in combat. He uses it in his fighting style, kind of like Spider-Man webs, except a scarf. He also wears a pair of goggles. Shota's eyes glow red when he's using his ability. So he wears his goggles so his enemies don't know when he's activated his quirk. His hair also floats as if he is somewhere without gravity. Think of the Little Mermaid when she's underwater and her hair's floating. His hair gives it away to his enemies, and he has long hair that he usually keeps in a man bun. But the crazy part is like when you first see him in the show and in the series, you think he's just a lazy guy, a lazy teacher, because he sleeps a lot. Like he literally shows up to class 1A the first day, and he has like a sleeping bag that's like a suit, like a walking sleeping bag, and he just goes in the classroom and falls asleep. And the classroom is like nothing but chaos, and he's just sleeping at the front of the classroom. He sleeps a lot due to having trained himself in keeping his eyes open for long periods of time. He's highly trained in combat, keen intellect, and immense stamina. He can fight for a long time, even after getting majorly injured. For instance, in one battle, he was forced to sever his own right leg during a fight against a villain, trying to cure him of his quirk. So he had to cut off his leg, preventing him to prevent him from losing his quirk. And but the way he does it, and the way he does it in the show is just so awesome. He's just like, he's fighting, and this guy like shoots him with the like quirk curing thing, and he just like off his leg like it was nothing, like no problem. It was like, what? Yeah. So I'm not going to go into much detail about the rest of the UA staff, just those two, because they're more important. But I will tell you the other teachers and like about their stuff and their quirks. So there's one, his name is Present Mike. He's a voice hero in the English, like he's an English teacher. He's the one that does the announcing, the one that you heard where he was like, Shoto Eraserhead, quirk can temporarily take away a person's quirk. That was him in that clip that I played. He has the personality of a radio DJ. I'm sorry, I'm messing this up. I promise I will do better. His quirk is his voice. It allows him to increase the volume of his voice. His ability is similar to a sonic scream. He can cause people's ears to bleed. He can like turn up his voice so loud. There is Cementos. He's a pro hero and he teaches modern literature. He is a humanoid block of cement. He is literally half man, half block of cement. His quirk, you guessed it, allows him to manipulate any cement-based material he touches, allowing him to deform the object into various shapes and sizes. It is also known that his quirk is among the most difficult of the UA teachers to fight against. Now, the most fun and interesting teacher is Midnight. She's a modern hero art history teacher at UA. She's known as an R-rated hero. It is not anime if there isn't some weird R-rated something in there. You know what I mean? Her hero costume style and fighting style is similar to a traditional dominatrix. She wears a breastless black leather leotard with like a corset over a skin tight white bodysuit. She's very playful and flirtatious, but she's got a temper. She has no shame dressing or acting sexually in front of young students, but that's anime. Her quirk allows her to put nearby people to sleep by exuding a sleep-like aroma from her body. It works better on men than women. She also uses dominatrix-type tools in her fighting, such as whips and feathers. Her suit is an ultra-thin fabric suit due to needing to have the aroma come out from her body. And now Snipe is a heroics teacher. He's a pro hero that looks like a cowboy with a gas mask on. His quirk is marksmanship. His quirk allows him to lock onto any target he can see within 600 meters and make any bullet he releases chase the target. The catch is that he cannot choose what part of the body the bullet hits. His weapons are modified guns and smoke grenades to conceal his movements or flush out enemies, hence the reason for the gas mask. It's kind of like a steampunk cowboy with a gas mask. Ectoplasm is the mathematics teacher and is a pro hero. He is skilled in close range combat, and his quirk is clones. His quirk gives him the ability to produce streams of ectoplasm from his mouth and transform it into clones of himself. All clones act as extensions of his body. So think of a hive mind. The clones can also make clones of themselves. The catch, he can only make 30 clones. So let's say he makes 10 clones. Those clones would only be able to make 3 clones. So anything that would total 30. So he can also make, I keep saying so, I'm sorry. He can also make 1 giant clone, but the catch is when he does that, it uses a lot of his energy for 1 giant blow, and he can't use his ability for a while after that. Next is Power Loader. He is a pro hero and is a teacher responsible for UA's costume development studio. He's a licensed developer and has knowledge about creating, upgrading, and maintaining costumes. His quirk is Iron Claws. His fingertips are metallic claws that are good for digging and mining through the ground. Vlad King, mainly known as Blood Hero. Vlad King is a pro hero and the homeroom teacher for Class 1B. He is the rival for Class 1A. Gran Torino is a former homeroom teacher and a retired pro hero, as well as All Might's mentor. He's a short elderly man, but don't let his short little old man persona fool you. He's very powerful in combat. He taught the world's #1 hero, All Might, how to fight and use his quirk. He has enhanced strength, enhanced durability. His quirk is called Jet. It allows him to shoot jets of air from the holes on the soles of his feet. It gives him incredible speed, kicking power, and the ability to fly short distances. The air uses his jets, the air he uses from his jets are from his breathing. If you have hung out with me for this long, thank you. I'm serious, this is the longest episode I'm probably gonna ever do. But we are now getting to the stars of the show, which is Class 1A. And there are 20 seats to each homeroom, to each class. And they are numbered in order that they arrive. But I'm going to take things out of order because I want to get the details of the main characters first. At seat number 18, but number 1 in our My Hero Academia hearts, is Izuku Midoriya. I know I said that wrong. He is mainly known as Deku, and he is the protagonist, the main #1 protagonist. The name Deku is actually the name his bully / classmate gave him. It means good for nothing or a blockhead or useless. He decides to use it as a superhero name because he says it's what made him. Deku is All Might's #1 fan, and he has a notebook he carries around with him full of notes about every superhero and anyone and everyone that has a quirk that he has come across. He makes notes on all of the moves they make, strengths, weaknesses, all that fun stuff. All Deku wants is to grow up to be like All Might. But there's a problem. He doesn't have a quirk. His mother takes him to the doctor to confirm it. His dreams are completely crushed, but he doesn't give up, even though his mom tells him, I'm sorry, but you'll never be a superhero. And there's, he's very emotional, and there are episodes where he's just crying and he's telling his mom, like, that's not what I wanted you to tell me. Like, I wanted you to tell me that I could be a superhero no matter what, right? Well, he accidentally meets All Might. In All Might transforms into, well, not really transforms, he kind of deflates into his true form, his skinny, no powers, dying All Might. No one has seen All Might in his true form before, so he begs Deku to not say anything. Deku asks him, can I be a superhero without having a quirk? And All Might, being his like skinny, scrawny, cranky, just had a really bad day, just got defeated trying to help someone, like trying to rob someone, and took a bunch of, he was just cranky, and he tells him no, and it crushes Deku. Now there's all this ruckus going on in another part of town, and it has to do with who All Might was fighting that tired him out and made him go deflated. But Deku's bully, his name is Bakugou, gets captured by a villain in all this ruckus in this other part of town. And there's a crowd building up around what is going on. And they realize that this villain has captured a kid, who, Bakugou. All Might makes his way to the part of town where all this is going on, and he hides in the back of the crowd, waiting to get his energy back up. Deku shows up, sees no one is helping his friend, even though he doesn't have a quirk. He remembers the villain, all the notes he took about him, and he uses it to his advantage, and he runs towards the danger to help his friend. Now keep in mind, Bakugou has a quirk, and Deku doesn't. All Might sees this going on, and is like, Deku, no! You can imagine it going on. And he transforms from his skinny, weak All Might to, skinny, weak true form to All Might, to his superhero form, to save Deku. And he does his signature, I am here! And Deku frees his friend Bakugou. And All Might takes over. He does the rest, defeats the bad guy. Deku, his friend, the bully, Bakugou, he's mad, okay? I'm going to tell you more about Bakugou later, but he's mad. And he wants to be this, like, strong, no one can mess with me, no one can hurt me, no villain can attack me, or whatever type of persona. And here he is, Deku, weak, no quirk, and has no superpowers, saves him, and it drives him crazy, gets mad, and is like, get out of here, Deku. So Deku's wandering around, and All Might's wandering around in his true form, and All Might finds Deku, and he apologizes. He said, if you asked if you could be a superhero without a quirk, and I was a hypocrite, and I said no, because I, in fact, was born without a quirk, and I was given my quirk. And then Deku is just shocked because of all the research that all these people have done. They have never heard of someone being given a quirk. It's everyone has been passed down a quirk from generation to generation. So All Might is called One for All because he can give his one quirk to all. Just like when I said earlier, All for One wants all of the powers for himself. One for All can give his one power to all, and he can not pass it down, but he can give it down. So he tells Deku, because I am dying, I was speculating passing down my quirk. Because you just ran into danger without a quirk, I want to give it to you. So, again, imagine Captain America when they decide to choose Steve Rogers, this skinny little dude. They decide to give it to him because he jumped on a grenade, right? So this was Deku jumping on a grenade and All Might saying, I want to give it to you. So Deku is freaking out, right? All Might says, there are conditions. We have to train you because your body would not handle my quirk and you would explode. He also told him he had to clean up all the beaches in his country, in his little town. And once that is completed, he would give his quirk to Deku. So Deku does everything. There's a training montage. There's a cleaning the beach montage. There's a skipping school to go clean up the beach montage. And so the school that he wants to get into, which is UA. So you have basic, human, regular school, except everybody at these basic schools, they all have quirks. And these are kids who do not want to be superheroes. They have to go through a exam and all these tests in order to be accepted to UA. And so you got to go through all these testing. There are some students who make UA just because they know a guy. They know a guy who knows a guy. And so they get let in. On the day of the UA entrance exam, Deku completes his tasks and he gets his training done and he gets all swole, right? But not too swole because they still need him to be a dorky looking kid, right? All Might says, okay, you have to eat a strand of my hair. And he's like, what? And so All Might tells him that he has to ingest his DNA so it can get into his system and he'll have a quirk and it'll take a few hours to kick in. So Deku eats his hair, right? He eats the strands of his hair. He makes it to the exam and his bully / friend Bakugou is like, what are you doing here? You don't have a quirk. And at first Deku has no change. There's like nothing changed. He's like, just trust me. I'm here for a reason. And he eventually develops this quirk. Bakugou is so mad. He's so mad. He feels betrayed. He feels that Deku's been lying to him this whole time, that something's not right, and that he is going to figure it out, right? Bakugou is a very caring and emotional kid, and he cries a lot, and he helps his fellow classmates as much as possible, and he would do anything to protect his classmates. Now, his quirk gives him the ability that's just like All Might's, an enormous amount of power. He has insane levels of strength, speed, and stamina. When he activates, he has this like green lightning all around him and all these red growing veins throughout his body. Now, like All Might said, your body won't be able to handle my power. Even with training, his body still wouldn't be able to handle the power. So he had to use it slowly and train himself and learn how to really use it. His quirk comes with a catch, and this is the catch. Deku can focus all the energy he builds up in one part of his body. So let's say he wants to punch someone. He builds up all this raw power and transfers it to his fist, and he punches someone with immense power. But the catch is, his body can't handle it. And when he punches someone, it breaks every bone in his arm. You can imagine how difficult that can be fighting a bad guy, right? Like, here you are, you're fighting a bad guy, and you do the whole super punch, and your arm just breaks and shatters. And so you're like, okay, well, I'm done now, right? Like, I can't do anything anymore. He has to learn to control the percentage of power he uses. So you'll hear him say, like, 30% Delaware smash and punch someone. there is also something else Deku can do that no one else could do, not even All Might. He can slip out of subconsciousness and speak to the spirits of the previous holders of his power, the One for All. And so throughout the show, you'll see that he will slip into subconsciousness and he will speak to the spirits of One for All, and they teach him how to use the ability of their signature move. It is something that All Might could never do. So even All Might, he tells All Might about this, and All Might's like, what? I was never able to speak to the spirits. And because he tells how many spirits he sees, and he says that there's one spirit there that I cannot see, but it's there. And All Might kind of uses that as like, oh, that's probably me. And because I'm dying, you can't see me, but it just means that that's my fate. That's where I'm going to be. You're seeing my future spirit, I guess you could say. He was never able... All Might was never able to communicate with the past users. For instance, one signature move is called a smoke screen, and it is a quirk of the 6th user of One for All, and it allows him to generate a thick cloud of purple smoke from his body. When it's time for Deku to find an internship during the summer, Deku seeks the guidance of Gran Torino, the same guy who is a mentor to All Might. The relationship between Deku and All Might is so cute, and I love it. And there's even more to Deku that I want to get into. I know all of that sounds so confusing. It sounds so confusing. And I'm telling you, there's one other person that's like a big, long explanation, and then the rest of them, I swear, is just a short explanation. But the relationship between Deku and All Might, it's so, like, you never see Deku's father. So All Might becomes like the father that Deku never had. And there's a part where Deku's mom is just like, I don't want you to be this superhero. I don't want to see you get hurt again. I don't want to see you almost die again, because he just keeps, like, using his power, crushing his body. And his mom is just like, I don't want to see that again. And so he tells All Might, like, you have to protect him. Like, you have to live for him, and you have to teach him everything that you know. And so all this time, All Might feels defeated and is like, I'm dying. And he just feels defeated. And then he's finally like, I have to live for Deku, and I have to protect Deku. And it's just like, it's the one episode I was bawling. I was crying. I was like, oh. But now I'm going to be talking about seat number 17. And that is my favorite cranky, I hate everyone, Bakugou. He's the protagonist. I'm sure I said that wrong. The second person of importance to the protagonist. Bakugou is the kid that Deku saved. Deku had no quirk. Bakugou is also known as Kanshan. His quirk is explosion. He secretes nitroglycerin like sweat from his palms of his hands, and he can ignite them on command, allowing him to create strong explosions. The more he sweats, the stronger his explosions are. Bakugou becomes the winner and the number one person in the UA Sports Festival. And what's hilarious is he's such a cocky, like, oh, I'm better than everyone type of person that, you know, they get up there and they see the contestants of the UA Sports Festival, and they talk to Bakugou, and they're like, you know, how do you feel about this? And he's like, they're all losers, and they are underlings. They are under me, right? Well, I forgot what happened. I'm being terrible at this. Where he wins, but he feels like he won by an unfair advantage. And he's mad. He's like, no, I want to win by defeating everyone, by defeating the ultimate person. And he's just like going on and on and on. And so they're showing them he's on the pedestals of like, number 1, number 2, number 3, but he's like got a muzzle on, like, because he's just so mad that he's just trying to fight everyone, and he's just trying to scream and yell, and they're just trying to give away the awards. So they stuck a muzzle on him. Another funny thing about him is he cannot decide on a superhero name because he wants all of the, excuse my language, he wants all of the badass names, right? And he's always suggesting some ridiculous name. And so officially his name is Great Explosion Murder God Dynamite, because he just wants he wanted Murder God, and he wanted explosion, and he wanted all these things, and people were just like, no, dude, that's not how this works. His costume is a tight black tank top with an orange X cross, an orange cross across the middle. His colors are mainly black, orange, and silver. He has large grenade gauntlets that reach his biceps, and the grenade gauntlets collect and build up his sweat, and it makes it possible for him to have one giant explosion when he needs it. Bakugou is crude, arrogant. Just like his power, he's short-tempered, aggressive. Someone just looks at him wrong and he's like, I'm gonna punch you in the face type person. But I love him. He's such a mood. He is Deku's bully in their childhood. And even though when they grow older, he tends to let go of a lot of it, he still bullies him in a tiny way. He's the one that gave Deku the name Deku. He has the personality of a WWE wrestler or a UFC fighter. He's cocky and always screaming about he's the best and will always be the best. He's placed first in many competitions, but there are times when he gets defeated, and even by Deku, and that is when Bakugou gets onto Deku, and is because Bakugou and All Might do not tell anyone that All Might gave Deku his power. But Bakugou is onto them. He was like, there is this weird relationship between you two. I'm going to figure it out. And he eventually does figure it out. And he feels betrayed. He's just like, why wasn't I chosen? That type of thing. He's like, because he looked up to All Might and was a huge fan of All Might just as much as Deku was. So he just has this competitive, why did I get chosen? Why isn't I number 1? To the point where the class of 1A is forced to be on a talent show. And they start a band for the UA school festival. And he even says things like, we're going to be beating the other classes through music. We're going to kill them through music. And they're like, whoa, dude. We ain't killing anybody through music. We're just trying to win this, He calls his classmates underlings as if they are under him. At one point in time, like I said, he feels betrayed by Deku and All Might because he starts to figure out that there's something up. And with that, you get a sense that his storyline would be awesome if he left the good guys and became a villain. And at one point in time, the League of Villains actually kidnapped Bakugou and try to turn him. But again, Bakugou is prideful, competitive, and he wants to be on the winning side. And he looks at the villains as the ones who always lose. And he's like, I don't want to be a loser. He wants to win like the heroes. Deep down, Bakugou cares. He won't show it because his love language is aggression, but he cares. And when there's any competition, you have the superheroes that are trying to de-escalate the situation, and there is no de-escalating the situation with Bakugou. It's just, let's kill him. Let's get the bad guy. Let's kill him. Whatever. And because of the rules that you have in My Hero Academia, you're actually not allowed to kill the villains. Just like Batman, and you get it. So for the remainder of the class, I'm going to tell you their quirks, but I'm not going to get into too much detail like I did with Deku and Bakugo. So, with seat number 1 in class 1A, you have Yuga Oyama. know I'm going to be saying their names wrong. Or Shiny Hero. He can't stop twinkling. His quirk is that he has a naval laser. It allows him to shoot a powerful laser cannon from his belly button. It's so powerful that it can blast through 2 meters of solid concrete. But if he fires his laser for more than 1 second at a time, his stomach hurts really bad. So that's one with a catch. Seat number 2 is Ashido Mina, or Pinky. Her quirk is acid. It allows her to produce a corrosive liquid from her body, but there's a limit to how long she can produce the liquid until her skin loses its resistance to the liquid. And if it's pushed too hard, it can be fatal because it dehydrates her body very fast. So seat 3, and another one of my personal favorites. I can't pronounce her actual name, but her superhero name is Frappy. Her quirk is of a frog. She can do anything a frog can do. Her abilities are enhanced swimming abilities, hopping at long distances, extending her tongue to a maximum of 20 meters. It can lift an entire person's body weight. She sticks to walls, ejecting / washing her stomach, camouflaging herself, is secreting mucus with different controlled effects, like an itching, paralysis, stuff like a frog can do. But like a frog, if she is exposed to cold, she goes into hibernation and is unable to function. Seat number 4 is Tenya Ida. His hero name is I can't remember how to pronounce it. Ingenium. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it. He is the class representative. His quirk is of an engine. He has car-like engines in each of his calf muscles, and he has incredible speed and extreme kicking power. He also he has to fuel the engines in his calf muscles by drinking orange juice. Why? I don't know. He has exhaust pipes for calf muscles, and at times he goes so fast he can't control himself, and just like an engine, he can overheat. Seat 5 is Uravity. She's also the main protagonist of the show. Her quirk is zero gravity, the one that you just heard a minute ago. She can nullify the effects of gravity on solid targets by touching them with the pads of her fingertips, and then they float. She's able to stop the gravity effect by touching her fingertips together. So she touches the object with her fingertips, separates her hands, and the items floats. When she puts her fingers together, they fall. The catch is anything that is extremely heavy, or if she tries to float herself, like it said in the thing, she yaks. She gets nauseous and sometimes pukes. Seat 6 is Tailman. His quirk is a tail. His tail is long and powerful. It functions as a third arm and can grab things. It's long and strong enough to break things and wrap around enemies. Seat 7 is Charger Bolt. His quirk is electrification. He can generate electricity and cover his body in it. He can emit his electricity over a distance. His catch is that he has no control of it. He exceeds his wattage limit. His brain shorts out and leaves him vulnerable for 1 hour. Seat 8 is Red Riot. His quirk gives him the power to harden and sharpen any or all parts of his body, causing his flesh to become jagged and rock-like. There is a limit to how much damage his hardened body can withstand, which causes the hardening itself to slowly dissipate. And he'll lose stamina, and he struggles to keep his quirk active. Seat 9 is Anima. It gives him the ability to command any creature in the animal kingdom by speaking to them. Whatever command he gives the animal will carry it out. However, he's unable to exert his control if they cannot hear his command. The target must also be a real animal, not something that's animal-like. Koji can also exchange information with the animals to find locations of people, potential enemies, stuff like that. He has been shown to use his quirk with flocks of birds to create a smoke screen of animals to attack an opponent. Along with this, he'll use insects and stuff like that. Seat 10, you have Sugar Man. It allows him to increase his strength 5-fold for 3 minutes. In order to activate his quirk, he needs to consume 10 grams of sugar. When converting sugar into strength, his cognitive functions gradually drop, making him very sleepy afterwards. So think of it like if you were to go drink a Red Bull and then you crashed. Kind of like that. Seat 11 is Tentacle. His quirk grants him a set of tentacles alongside his arms. He can transform the tips of these tentacles to replicate other parts of his body. Example, mouth, ears, eyes. The duplicated body part are more effective than the original. As a result, he'll be able to hear better, see better, see through multiple angles at one time, and they grant him much higher degrees of strength. He actually doesn't speak out of his normal mouth. He has like a tentacle that comes out and he speaks through that mouth. And he has like, sorry, I'm actually covering my face as I do this. He has like a mask covering his mouth. Seat 12 is Earphone Jack. Her quirk is she has like a pair of headphone jacks hanging from her earlobes. And when the jacks are plugged into something, she can channel the sound of her heartbeat through them in the form of a violent vibration attack. She can stretch her earlobes several meters. The quirk also allows her to like plug into a wall, and she can... Sorry, I totally said that like a girl. A plug into a wall? Anyway, she can plug into a wall and she can hear everything going on in the building. So she'll be able to tell how many people are in the building, stuff like that. Seat number 13 is Cellophane. He has tape dispensers like organs in his elbows from which he can shoot long cellophane tape-like strips. He can also retract them. They appear to be somewhat sturdier than regular tape. So to me, it's kind of like if Spider-Man were to have webs coming out of his elbows. That type of thing. Another one of my favorites is Jet Black. It allows him to manifest a sentient shadow monster from his body, and he can materialize and contract freely. So he has this like second persona, the second personality called Dark Shadow. And Dark Shadow's energy is limited and it can be drained by bright light. When it runs out of energy, Dark Shadow retracts back into Jet Black's body. The only way I can think of it is, like, explain it, is Raven from Teen Titans. When she has this, like, Raven spirit type black shadow that comes out of her, it's that same thing. He is actually a Raven. He's, like, half... He's not even half. Like, he has the body of a boy and then the head of a raven. And so he has his personality and then he has the Dark Shadow. And he warns them, like, if you let Dark Shadow have complete control, it's bad. You know, you can't let that happen. So he has to have control of this shadow monster. You know, it depends if in bright light, Dark Shadow is weak and smaller in size. But if he's in the dark, he is huge and easier to control. In total darkness, like I said, it grants it far greater strength and defense. It's even powerful enough to rip out and cut down multiple full-grown trees with ease, right? So Dark Shadow is more difficult to control in the dark, causing it to rampage based on its own free will. So like I said, if there's too much light, he's small. medium-sized light, easier to control, total darkness. He is just like out his own free will, kind of like a demon coming out, and just, yeah, like I said, he warns people. It's bad. So seat number 15 is a fan favorite. That's Shoto Todoroki. Before I get into Todoroki, I have to talk about his father a little bit. His father is pro-hero name Endeavor. He has the quirk to control fire. He's just like the Human Torch. His whole body engulfs in flames, gives him the ability to fly, stuff like that. He is the number 2 superhero. And he fights like hell to be this number 1 superhero. But the thing that he lacks is heart. He is, excuse me for the lack of a better word, a hard ass. He does not care about fans. Doesn't, he will like pop a kid's balloon type of thing. Steal a kid's ice cream, stuff like that. He's a huge jerk. He's not a great guy. He becomes the number 2 superhero when All Might steps down and is forced to retire. So he becomes number 1 by default. Yeah. So like I said, he's a huge jerk. And he was abusive towards Todoroki and his family. Todoroki's mother's quirk is ice. So think of Elsa from Frozen. And his father's quirk was fire. So Todoroki is controlled by both. But he resented his father so much that he refuses to use his fire side. But here's a little bit more info, right? Shoto's quirk gives him the ability to generate ice from the right side of his body and flames from the left side. And due to years of rejecting his father, Shoto has developed a habit of favoring ice. He's like, I want to honor my mother. He abused me and my mother. I don't want anyone to see my fire side, and I don't want because his father's kind of a narcissist. He's like, I don't want my father to take credit. So he tries to use his mother's side as much as possible. So while he's capable of using both elements simultaneously, he isn't used to doing this, and he still needs to practice with his fire side. And being at UA, he's kind of forced to use his fire side. If he overuses one element without using the other, then his own body temperature suffers. The ice half will cause frostbite. The fire half will cause heat stroke until his body limit is reached. However, neither has any visible effect on his body. Shoto can also easily negate this weakness by alternating between ice and fire. Another crazy thing is you see him and half his hair is white, like Elsa, and half his hair is red. He also has what I thought was a birthmark. So it's like a red circle birthmark patch around his eye. And you learn later on in an episode about his backstory that his father was so abusive that his mother hated his father. And one day she looked at Shoto Todoroki, and all she saw was his father. And she does something terrible to Todoroki that causes him to have this red patch around his eye, and it caused his mother to go into a mental hospital for hurting young Todoroki. So that's another reason why he resents his father and doesn't want to use his father's side. But he patches that relationship with his mother and decides that, like I said, he respects and honors his mother. He knows what happened, what mental state she was in, stuff like that. So seat number 16 is Invisible Girl, and you guessed it, invisibility. Her body is completely invisible. In addition to the stealth capabilities granted to her by her invisible body, Toto can refract light that passes through her, allowing her to intensify the light into a blinding flash. Now, the thing with her is she is invisible 24/7. She can't shut it off. And I don't think there is ever a time where she turns it on. Now, seat 19 is grape juice. His quirk is called Pop Off, and it allows him to produce these little balls, these purple balls from his head. And the balls grow back just as fast as he, like, rips them from his head. The balls are incredibly sticky, and they stick to any surface. But they do not stick to him. He can bounce off of them. The duration of the adhesive quality is determined by his overall health. He can pull a large amount of these objects from his head. However, if he pulls too many, it will cause him to start bleeding from his head, from his scalp. He is the pervert. You know, in every anime they have one. He's the pervert. He's always about boobs and girls and butts and, you know, any excuse to grab a girl by her boobs, any like, excuse to talk about a girl. Just, you know, typical anime. There's always a girl that's half naked, and there's always a girl, or there's always a person that's a pervert. Speaking of girl that's half naked, last but not least is seat 20, and that's Creati. And she is also the vice class representative. Her quirk is creation. Her quirk gives her the availability to create any non-living material or object from her exposed skin by transforming the molecular structure of her fat cells. In order to create something, she needs to understand the molecular structure of what the material and object is made of. So the more she eats, the more material she has to work with. So she needs considerable food ingestion for her quirk to be effective. However, it takes her a long period of time and the more skin exposed to create larger objects, to the point where she forces large objects through her costume. And it kind of, at first, because they haven't gone through the creating costume phase in a part of the show, and so yeah, it tears up her costume. But then later on in the show, she kind of upgrades her costume to where it's pretty much nothing. It's like a mini skirt, and it's very easy for her to like pull it apart so she can like show her chest, you know what I'm saying? So there's times where they need something and she'll turn around and like pull her costume apart and produce whatever she needs from her boobs. But anyways, this is also the reason for her slim figure, as she constantly burns her body's fat to create objects. It's also possible that this is a big weakness. If that she creates too much without replacing her calories, she can become weak. So that is it for class 1A. And there is a class 1B, which is their classmate rivals. 1B can't stand 1A because they're always like in the limelight. Something's always happening to where they become the heroes and whatever, and 1B just kind of like never gets to be a part of the fun. And so they constantly try to bully 1A. I'm not going to get into detail about them, but there is someone from class 3B that is important. And this is Mirio Tagato. He's also known as Lemillion. His quirk allows him to become intangible, letting him to pass through any tangible matter. He can phase through walls, the ground, as well as let enemy attacks pass right through him harmlessly. While intangible, he experiences a falling sensation because he still has mass. Additionally, everything passes through him, including light, sound, air. While his quirk is active, he can't see, hear, or breathe. This also means that he has to keep at least 1 foot solid at all times while his quirk is active, or else he will fall into the ground. Now, why is he important? Because he's the one All Might, Gran Torino, and all the other superheroes decided that All Might should give his one-for-all ability to. But All Might met Deku and gave one-for-all to Deku without discussing it with the other superheroes. Now, there are just as many villains as there are superheroes, but I'm only going to tell you about 3. The one thing I can tell you about the villains is when episodes go into their backstories, you start to feel so bad for them. Like, they had a rough childhood. They had a rough time with their quirks. And it's either just a really bad quirk, or they just got the short end of the stick when it came to getting quirks. So first is All For One, the one that damaged All Might into retirement. All For One's quirk allows him to steal other people's quirks, leaving them quirkless, and wield the quirks as his own. All For One can also redistribute his stolen quirks to other people. In order to steal a quirk, he also must physically touch the user's body, as touching something produced by a quirk, such as the flames of a fire user, would not suffice. While he could steal any quirk, All For One's body cannot properly contain quirks of newer generations, which is the reason why he sought out a doctor. He also sought out a doctor because All Might injured All For One way more than he injured All Might. He also has this doctor to do research because he has a limit on how many quirks he can take. And so he's kind of finds this doctor and does experiments so he can take in all these quirks. Next is Tenko Shimura. I know I said that wrong. And he's the main bad guy and the leader of the League of Villains. He's also known as Decay. Now, he's the one where you see his backstory, you feel so bad. It's so sad. His quirk allows him to disintegrate whatever he touches with his entire hand, with all 5 fingers. Okay? His name is Decay because when he touches something, it starts to decay. And of course, with anime, it's kind of like gory and gross, but it starts to decay, and then they like explode with blood or whatever. And what's sad about his backstory is it shows him as a little kid. His father is abusive. He runs outside. His dog is outside. And you can see where I'm getting at with this. He freaks out. He touches family members. He touches his sister. She dies. He touches other family members. He accidentally kills like every single member of his family, including except when his dad comes around, because his dad was abusive, he had no problem with, you get it. It's so sad. His quirk can even spread beyond what he's touching, allowing him to disintegrate large groups of enemies instantly. It spreads quickly, and it spreads through the victim's entire body. And it's sad. Another villain and another member of the League of Villains is Warp Gate. It grants him the ability to create and manipulate a dark fog from his head and hands. This fog acts as a portal to another location. Whenever he produces a mass of the dark fog, it can transport anything and it comes in contact with to any location of his choosing. He can also create multiple masses of fog and send people or objects or things to multiple locations. But he needs to know the exact location in order to do that. Last but not least is my favorite villain, and that's Himika Toga. She's a major antagonist of MHA. Think of Harley Quinn. like the anime version of Harley Quinn, and a member of the League of Villains. She's quirky. She's a cheerful girl to the point of smiling even after she killed someone. You know, think of Harley Quinn when she's just like being goofy and laughing and whatever, even after she just like killed someone. She's an amazing villain because she loves to be one. Himiko's quirk grants her the ability to transform into any physical look-alike of another individual. So think of Mystique from X-Men, as well as copy their voice. So yeah, Mystique. She can transform into people whose blood she has ingested. The more blood she drinks, the longer she has access to that person's form. For example, 1 cup of blood lets her transform for a total of like 18 hours. She could switch between the appearances of multiple people if she drinks the blood of more than one person. She can even duplicate a person's clothing, so like their superhero costume. Though her own clothes would overlap the transformation, and so of course she like ends up naked. Like she has to take her clothes off in order to transform into a person with their clothes, if that makes any sense. Upon deactivating her quirk or switching to another disguise, the disguise melts into this like gray liquid goo stuff, almost like clay. And at one point, they all the League of Villains kind of go through this high stressful situation because there's another group of villains that attack the League of Villains, and it's a crazy episode, but it's also a good episode at the same time because you see all of their backstories. But anyways, when they're done going through this whole stressful situation, their powers kind of level up. And so not only after this awakening that they called it, they go through this awakening, not only is she able to shapeshift into who she wants with their clothes, all that fun stuff, she can also use their quirks for the person she shapeshifted into. So before then, she was just able to shapeshift into people. So shapeshift into a person, if they had a quirk, whatever, she wasn't able to use their quirk. But now, after this awakening, she was able to use their quirks as well. So, that is it for the villains. That, I warned y'all that it was going to be a lot. It's a lot to take in, and some of it is confusing, some of it's not, some of it's amazing, some of it's not. Like, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a thing or two about My Hero Academia, and I hope it makes you want to watch it. Like, I know all of what I just said was so long, and there's even more to it. There's even more villains that I want to talk about, and more superheroes that I want to talk about. But it's already like an hour and 30 minutes. This is the longest episode I've ever done in the history of the Nerd in Texas podcast. So I'm going to end it on this and let you guys go. If you stuck with me for an hour and 30 minutes of me talking, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just, I don't even want to ask anything else of you guys right now. It was Easter. I hope y'all had a great Easter. I hope you guys have a great week. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, again, thank you for sticking around with me for this long. I am sorry. I really did try to condense it to make it something shorter. But again, I hope you enjoyed it. Just let me know you enjoyed it. Reach out to me. Say hi. That's the only thing I'm going to ask you to do. I'm not going to do the whole, like, please, like, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. If you want to choose my podcast, hit me up, man. And we'll talk about it. And then I'll give you a shout out. It'll be fun. Not just to other podcasters, but to my listeners, too. So, hit me up. I love you guys. And I hope you have a great week.